What did we learn last week? How are we feeling about full stack?
We learned about beekeeper.
Yeah, what's Beekeeper for?
Um, that's where it's a database, right, that we use to get our APIs, right, or information for.
Yeah, along those lines, Beekeeper is a database client, right? So Beekeeper isn't the database itself, but it's how we access the database. One of the ways we access the database. So far, we've seen two of them, right? So one is using Beekeeper to have that UI to be able to connect into the database, be able to see that data. And then we've also started to see Express for the first time, right? So we're getting into full stack. Corwin mentioned server get and post. We're starting to build our own APIs, starting to see that data come together. Ali mentioned SQL is cool. We're going to get into a little bit more SQL in the first half of the week. And then in the second half of the week, we're going to learn something called an ORM, or an object relational mapper, that can basically write the SQL without us having to write it ourselves. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. And then you guys are going to have the option of either continuing to go on our Messages app and add in additional functionality, or move on to the next project, which is going to be either a library or a blog project. So both similar ideas, but starting to get that full stack, storing information in the database, all of that good stuff. On Wednesday, actually, this is a short week. On Wednesday, you have some alumni coming in. Mel will be hosting the session. He is your TA for this week. And we've got a bunch of alumni coming in, ranging from discussions on React Native and how to build a mobile project, to what it's like working at different sizes of companies, down to Mel's individual journey and what he does, post graduation. So that is coming up on Wednesday, and then Thursday we have Open Hack for real this time. So no class on Thursday, 6 p.m. I have confirmed with Mike. I will let you know if that changes, but I am pretty sure we are on track for Open Hack on Thursday. So this week is going to be about the Messages app in just the 2 nights that we have for instruction from me. Wednesday, you'll hear from fellow alumni. Thursday, we have Open Hack, and then next week we will dive into the ORM. Next Wednesday and Thursday, Ryan will be coming back, and Ryan will be teaching you guys a package framework company called Clerk. And you will learn how to do your login pages and actually have server-side integration, be able to access all of that information. So that is coming next Wednesday and Thursday, which means over the next 2 weeks, you only have 4 days of instruction with me. Count your blessings. I will be at Open Hack though, so we'll see all of you guys then. And a reminder that one-on-ones are available as always. And if there isn't a time where one-on-one is available, either with me or with a TA that you are hoping to meet with, please shoot us a Slack message. We normally have more availability than our Calendly shows, so we can be pretty flexible with all of that. And a reminder that a one-on-one with me does not need to be just a check-in, right? If you are stuck on some code, if you're curious to see how I would build a feature, if you want help finding APIs or getting your databases started, those are all things that I can help with, as can many of the TAs as well. Did we have any questions before we dive into yet another front end and back end setup? I'm going to shoot to do it in 5 minutes tonight. We did it 30 last week, so 5 seems fair tonight. I promise repetition does make it easier, but opening the floor to any questions we have before we dive in. And it doesn't have to be about what we're learning, can be about your capstone or something you heard in the news or a concept that you would like revisited. No, we're good to go. Let's dive on in. We start where we always do, headed to my code. We're going to make our new folder week 18 of 24. Can you believe it? We are chugging right along. We are over that 3/4 mark. We are going to make a new folder. We're going to call it day 1. In day 1, we are going to make another new folder and we are going to call it chat backend. We are going to take our chat backend, open it in VS Code. We are going to open our terminal. And we are going to npm init. Oh, I lied. We're going to npm init -y. Remember, npm init -y. Don't just remember the steps. Remember why we're doing that step. Why are we doing npm init? npm init is what is setting up our package.json, which allows us to install packages. So we npm init -y. Once we've npm initted -y, we're going to npm install, and we're just going to get the gauntlet. So express, pg, and cores. We've got our npm install. After we npm init -y, we've got npm install express, pgs, and cores. We've got 2 other things that we've got to set up here. One, we've got to make a new file, and we're going to call it server.js. And then the other thing we want to do is go to our package.json, go to our scripts, and add in one that says start. And we tell it, in order to start, we're going to npx nodemon our server.js. npm init, npm install express, pg, and cores, create our file called server.js manually, go to our package.json, npx nodemon our server.js. Then take a step and say, all right, backend is all set up. Live share is coming your way. It's in the chat. Give you guys a minute, and then we will move on to our front end.
I have a question.
Yes.
So for some reason, VS Code won't let me like right click and then do the open integrated terminal. Do I have to have a file to be able to do that or no?
No, you shouldn't have to. The other way you can do it is just go up to terminal at the very top and then down to new terminal, and that should open it in the right spot for you.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Might need a computer reboot if it's acting up on a right click, or quit VS Code and reopen it. Plush.
I, by mistake, closed the VS Code window with a chat backend. Like, can I just open the folder, or do I need to do something?
Nope, you can just open the folder.
Okay.
No special way of opening that.
Hey Max, how did you get your package lock again?
npm init -y first, and then enter, and then npm install pg, express, and cores.
PGs. Okay. PG Express.
And the order of those doesn't matter. It's just whenever you list multiple packages with a space between it, it just lets you install multiple at the same time.
Max, I have a question.
Yes.
Since we're doing full stack, do we always have to do the server.js?
You don't actually have to call it server.js. A lot of people will call it like index.js. But
Okay.
if we are setting up a backend, yes, you need some JavaScript file that Node can run in order to run the backend.
Okay, thank you.
And then the same goes for like, well, technically you could make a backend that doesn't have a database, right? You could make a API that returned the current time if you wanted to. So you don't always have to install PG, you don't always have to install cores, but because we are making an API that's set up to be access to a database that is going to be accessed on another local host or another port, we always do cores, we always do PG, we always do Express. But not every project will be like that. And Taylor, if that still isn't working, let me know.
I can't right now. You're shut up.
Do I have to have the package lock JSON?
You should have a package lock JSON if you've run the npm install express PG in cores. The package lock JSON gets generated when we do that install command.
Yeah, it's not working still for me. I feel like I missed something.
Did you npm init space -y before that?
Could have sworn I did. -y, trying again.
What if we do them
Okay,
backwards?
npm.
I don't know, Jen. Do you want to share your screen and we can make sure everything looks okay?
Do you want to find out?
You should init before you install. It might give you an error when you install without an init that it like doesn't know where to install to.
I forgot the -y, so I went back in and did it again.
Okay, so the way that we can make sure everything is set up is if you give me
Yeah.
remote.
Mhm.
And go to package.json. You'll see that we've got these 3 dependencies in there. That means the install worked and it saved it in your package.json. So you're good to go.
Cool, thank you. Oh, cool. Now Zoom is making it like super wide every time I share and unshare.
What are you good?
Yes, I forgot a letter on one of those.
That will do it. And Taylor, you're good? Cool. Anyone else need
Did
help?
have a question, yeah. My package.json has the 3 dependencies, the cores, the express, and the PG, but it doesn't have the script keyword, the other things that your package.json has in it. So does that mean that the init didn't work, or
Share your
trying
screen.
to figure out why I only have that? I
I'm
didn't have it
curious
last
to
time.
see if you have an older version of npm that's kicking around on your computer. Share your screen and let's take a look.
Okay.
And Danny, I'll come to you next. Okay, so my guess is that when you initted, you didn't have the -y. Let's test that.
The very first time I didn't, and then I stopped
Ah.
it and I did it again.
You're missing the space there.
Oh,
So if we just delete this out and then do our npm init and then space -y and then reopen it, you'll see, whoa. Okay, let's try this again. Delete everything, then init -y. Jen, in answer to your question, the order apparently does matter very, very much. Okay, now this is more along what I expect. So npm install PG, Express, and cores. That put your dependencies in. The order of this file does not matter, by the way, in case anyone was curious. And then our npx nodemon server.js, and you're caught up and good to go.
okay, thank you.
Danny, what's up?
I'm just lost. I'll just be honest. It's been a day for me, so I'll just share my screen.
Go for it. Okay.
So this is me, and I don't know.
you've got something similar going on where your npm init didn't work as we anticipated. Let me just see if you've got it hiding. Okay, here's what's going on. You npm install init -y. We don't want to install init, we just want to init. So we are going to clear these out. We're going to init again, but this time we're going to omit the install. Now that we've got that going on, everything looks right here. So we can npm install express pg and cores again. And now we've got the dependencies in, so we can just change this over to our npx nodemon server.js. And we are good to go.
Okay, thank you so much, Max.
No problem. Anyone else need help?
I have a quick question. I don't
Yes.
really need help. So mines are set up, but when I started my package.json, I did npm init -y.
Mhm.
Mine didn't have the start after the test. Like I added that in on my own.
That's normal. Sometimes, depending on what version of npm you have and the order that you created your files, if you init -y before you make the server.js, it doesn't know the server.js exists and it doesn't put the start in. But because we are adjusting our start to use nodemon instead of node anyway, it doesn't really matter if we add it in after the fact or that it detects that file is there.
Okay.
It's a good question. And all throughout class tonight and tomorrow, if you have questions, well, especially even on Wednesday when the alumni come in, ask questions. This, you will not memorize every single step that we're doing tonight. It is not humanly possible to remember what did we get to last night? 29 different steps for the to-do list app. You're not going to remember all 29 of them. But if you can remember why we are accomplishing that task, not how to do it, but why are we doing this task, it becomes much easier for those commands to sink in. Think about it as an object. You're not going to remember the exact line of code that it takes to make that happen. But if you know the key, if you know where you filed that away in your memory, you know why we are doing that step, all of a sudden, how you do that step comes out of your memory much easier. Full stack is a lot. I know it's a lot. This is the way it's done because the internet has to have servers and computers have to have front ends, and we need information to flow between the two of them. So any point tonight, if you don't know why are we doing this step, what is this step accomplishing, raise your hand, come off mute, scream bloody murder, ask me to re-explain that. Everything we just set up is our back-end setup. We haven't started writing any of our back-end code yet, but we've got all of our back-end files set up. We've got npm ready to go. We've installed some packages. We are now at the point where we can start coding things out. Now we're going to switch to our front end. Remember, when we are running a command in our terminal, we are running it in a specific folder. So we have to know what folder we are in before we run that command. So I'm coming down here to my terminal. I'm going to control. I'm going to assume that you guys can just always view my screen at all times because that couldn't be a bad idea. Okay, down here in my terminal, it says I'm in chat backend, but that doesn't give me a full picture of where I'm at. So I'm going to pwd, and that's going to show me I'm in week 18, day 1 chat backend. Now, I could open another terminal and do all of this in another terminal, but you guys, if you're going to be backend developers, should get terminal experience. So what you're going to do is cd, change directory, cd, space, ... 1 dot means my current folder, 2 dots means go up 1 folder. So when I do that, I am now in my day 1 folder. Now, just to prove a point here, I'm not going to run pwd, but you could if you wanted to. You can run pwd whenever you want, print working directory. Where the fuck am I? You are here, pwd. Okay, so we're in our day one. We are going to npx create React app chat dash front end. Make sure you get your spaces right. Make sure you get your dashes right. While that's cooking in the background, we're going to go back to Finder. We're going to go grab our chat front end. All the files might not be in here yet. That's okay. We're grabbing our chat front end and we're opening that in a new VS Code window. We're shoving that off to the side. We're starting a live share. Once that is all opened, we're doing the steps we always do. Source, app.css, Command A, delete, save, app.js, go to our header, delete out our header, save, delete out our logo. Right click, open an integrated terminal, npm start. Should get a white screen going on over here. Give everyone a minute to catch up on that. Open the folder, app.js, delete out the header, delete out the logo, app.css, Command A, delete, open in terminal, npm start. Okay. Anyone need a minute?
Yeah, I don't know if it. I might need help, maybe.
Share your screen. Okay, oh, nope, that's mine. You are in your front end. Oh no. It's like your npx create React app crap the bed halfway through. What's going on? Oh, that's mine. This is yours. Okay, you ended up in your chat front end folder and then you create React app. We don't create the chat front end manually. We let the npx command do that for us. So we're going to try that again. I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to delete your oh, I don't even know what happened here. I'm going to delete both of these. Right way to do this, when I'm in the back end, I'm going to cd space ... That gets me into my day one. Now that I'm in my day one, I'm going to npx create React app chat front end. And notice what happens over here. It makes that new folder for me and then sticks everything inside of it. So that's the one that we want to open in VS Code. Maybe. No. Do it myself. File, new window. File, open. Sorry, drag and drop doesn't work sometimes on screen share and it's frustrating. My code. 18, day one, chat front end. Now that we've got chat front end, we go source app.js. We delete out our header. We delete out our stupid logo. We clear out our app.css. And then finally, we right click, open an integrated terminal and do our npm start, and you are good to go. It's your quota.
Max, so I just want a clarification. So we will always manually do we'll always do our back end how we set it up, but
Mhm.
then we'll always do front end from the terminal and then pull that open, right?
If you're creating a React front end, yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it's a little confusing because when we npm init, we have to be inside the folder. So we have to make the backend folder ourselves. But when we npx create React app, it creates the front end folder for us. So those two are different. Corwin, it doesn't really matter where you open the integrated terminal, but package.json is a safe one to open it from, and then npm start after it's open. Okay, so
I have a question.
yes,
Sorry.
go for it.
On our backend, since we didn't in our server.js assign it to the port 3001, now the front end is asking if it wants to run on another port. Do I just tell it no, since we're gonna do that? Doing that like we did it before, or no?
The problem is that you've got a React server running somewhere else.
Oh, somewhere else. All
And
right.
so if you say no to that, it's just going to be like, all right, I give up, and not start at all. So you can say no to it, go find the other React terminal and Control-C to stop it or close that whole window, and then go back to your front end and restart it. The other
Okay.
option is that you can hit Y to that, but when you set up your backend, make sure that you do it on 3002, not 3001.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
I did share a front end live share, Jen, at 5:57. And if you need it again, let me know. So if you are following along, you should just have a white localhost 3000 open in your backend. Anyone need help? Okay. So far, if yours is on 3001, that's okay. We'll get crazy tonight and change our backend server so we don't run into any issues. Okay. So far, we've run class the way we've always run it, right? I do a couple steps, you try and do a couple steps, everyone panics because they think they're behind, and then all of a sudden everything's right. Tonight, we're going to do things a little differently. I'm going to say pause. I'm going to go do everything. You are not going to follow along. Then I will say resume, and you guys can do everything. I promise I will take more breaks than normal, but while you are following along, I want you to take notes. Whether that's in a notebook, whether that's in the Notes app, whether that's in a Google Doc, it is more important that you understand what we're doing, not how we do it. How we do it is going to be uploaded to GitHub at the end of the night. You can always go back and reference my code. If you are someone who only learns by doing it, you will have a chance to do it. I will say red light, green light. Red light means just sit down, take some notes. Green light, okay, now everyone go catch up. And when we get to yellow light, most of you will be caught up and we'll go back to red light. Everyone ready? Red light, do not follow along. When we get to green light, it is going to be your call. Plush, do you think we're in Tip Hill and it's upside down or something? Red light means do not do anything, just watch along with me. Green light, you can either copy and paste my code if you understand it, or you can do a mad dash and try and catch up. So red light to get started. All right, I'm heading over to my backend. The objective here is to get my backend server set up. We've got all the files created, but now we need to get our server.js rocking and rolling. So I need 3 things right off the bat. I'm going to require out my express. I'm going to get my cores. Doesn't matter which order I do these. And I'm also going to get my PG. I am going to set up my server, which is coming from Express. I'm going to tell my server to use two things. One is cores, so that I can make cross-origin requests and share that to the front end. And I'm also going to use my express.json so that when I send in a body, it knows JSON's coming in. I am also going to server.get a rec for my request, res for my response, and I'm just going to res.send server online. Doesn't really matter what you send here. This is just a way that we can test our server, make sure that it is running, make sure I am not typing invalid syntax like I just did. Then we are going to server.listen on my 3000, which is going to, nope, on my 3010, go all the way up to 3010. We're going to have to use that in the front end, but hopefully you guys don't have 9 other React servers running somewhere on your computer. And then we are going to console.log server online at port 3010. I save, I come back down, and I'm confused. I don't know where I am in my terminal. So I pwd, and it tells me I'm in my day 1 folder. If I npm start right now, it's like, the fuck are you talking about? What are you trying to start? I have to be in my backend folder in my terminal before I can start it. So I cd to my chat backend, and now I can npm start. That tells me my server is online at port 3010. So I come over, I go to localhost 3010, I get my server online. Green light. No idea, Jen. The only thing that I did in my terminal, cd to make sure that you're in that backend folder, and then npm start down in the terminal.
Max,
Yes.
could you explain lines 9 to 11?
Yes. So
Okay, thank
we need certain endpoints in our server, right? Our server is up and running, and it's like, what do you want from me? So what we have to do is think about it as like in React, we have routes to link up a URL to the page, to the component we want to show up. We have that same concept here in Express. So in Express, this get slash is saying when you go get the home page, when you go get localhost 3010 with nothing after it in the URL, what do you want to show up? Well, the fact that I went to localhost 3010 over here and hit enter, that was the browser making the request. Now Express goes, ooh, 3010 I'm listening to any requests coming in. You're requesting the homepage. So what would you like to respond into that request? We would like to respond and send back this thing that says server online. So the request comes in and we respond by sending back server online. That answer it?
It did, thank you.
Danny, what's up?
So I need mine just chat backend without like a hyphen, and when I put it in, it still won't find it. I don't understand why.
Shares me.
Because at first I did the hyphen, I'm like, oh wait, but then I'm
okay.
like, oh, I didn't name it that way. So
This is really good for everyone to hear. Spaces are the natural enemy of developers. So there's a reason why we use dashes. What you have to do in the terminal when you have a space is you actually have to say chat and then use this the backslash, which is the one underneath delete. Then a
Okay.
space, and then you can do your word backend and have it work. Because that space is in there, we need to tell it like, no, I'm not telling you another directory to change into. The space is part of the file name. So this is called escaping in the terminal. And we're basically saying, no, don't treat this like a space like you would another command. There's actually a space in the file name. So treat it like an actual space. So once we do that escape, now you'll notice it's working. The other
okay, thank you.
Yep. And then just npm start here and you're good to go.
Thank you.
Jen, was that your problem as well?
Yeah, but I just kind of
Would you like to share your screen?
headache. I was gonna say, how do I get into, because I was in day one and then it's CD chat /
Okay,
space backend.
you have to be careful though, because you're not in where you think you are. If I PWD here, I'm all the way up at your home folder.
Just told me I was in day one.
It
Okay.
lies. You
Okay.
were in day one right here, but then you did a CD with nothing after it. And it's like, where, I don't know where you want to go. Back to the home folder. So to get back down there, we need to CD to your desktop. Nope, to your desktop, to your C5 my code, to your week 18, to your day one, and then finally down into your chat backend. Now that we're all the way down there, we can PWD. We are definitely in the chat backend, so we can npm start, and you are good to go.
Thank you.
So Palash asked, why do we need this server.use express.json? Same reason that we put in this course. By default, Express is going to block anything that's not coming from its very specific port. So when we do the server.use, we're saying disable the cores, any cores requests coming in, that's totally fine, you're allowed. Here, this is actually parsing the JSON. So when we get that text coming in, we always JSON.stringify it on the front end. Well, because the internet can't send complex objects. So we stringify it, it comes into the server, and we're like, we don't want that string crap. Like, we want the actual objects and arrays and all of that. So this server.use is actually called a middleware because it is running between the middle of the request coming in and our endpoint code actually running. So that is a middleware that is built into Express, which is why we can say Express dot whatever. It is coming from the Express package, and then we're saying .json. Basically, if you see the content type in the header set to application.json, just parse that sucker out. We don't actually need this yet until we start sending requests with the JSON body, but when we're doing our server setup, generally a good idea to just include everything in there. All right, yellow light. Anyone need another minute?
Okay, wait. So quick question. So did we type in that npx known mon server in the terminal?
No,
did-
we did npm start, and that ran the npx nodemon for us because we told it how to start in our package.json.
Mm. Mhm. Okay. Let me try.
The difference where, Amberlyn?
Let's see. Yesterday we used the client database. Are we not using that today, or that's coming up?
Next step.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Going good? Okay. Now we've got a database that we've got to connect to. So we go to Beekeep, or we start at Postgres. I command space Postgres. Sure.
Wait, are we on red right now or still on green?
Good question. We can green this one. Green with a potential yellow coming. So everyone can follow along on this.
Sorry, before we go ahead, there's something wrong. I'm not really sure what. I think I might have did my npm start in the wrong I'm not even sure.
Share your screen.
So this right here, this is my code. Well, this is my back end, and then this is my front
Okay,
end.
so again, we have to pay attention. What folder are you in? You're in day one. So when you are running start, it doesn't know what you're trying to start because you're not in the back end. You're only in day one. Day one has both the front end and the back end in it. So here we've got a CD to your chat back end. Now you're down in your back end. Now we can do our start and everything will work okay. No, it won't. Because we are rewiring. Now you're good to go.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Shannon.
God, what the hell?
So when I open my React, when I do my npm start, it comes up with 3001. And when I put 3010 in, it just comes up and says page cannot be found.
Okay, share your screen. Take a look at your backend server. Is your backend server up and running? No, got some errors.
No.
And we've got some major issues because you don't have a package.json going on in there. So
I did.
Because you ended up with 2 chat backends. So we're gonna go open. I'm gonna just copy this whole file, and then we're gonna go open the other one, and hopefully that's the right one. Sure is. So at some point, go back in and delete that other one that just has the server in it.
Okay.
Now, this way. Well, wherever your
No.
browser is,
God
just
only
make
knows.
sure you can get to 3010.
Okay, yep, it's there and I've got server online.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Go delete that other one. It's the one without the dash in it. Anyone else? Okay, green light. Open the Postgres app, command space, POSTGRES, enter. Make sure you've got running. If you don't have running, you can go ahead and hit the start button. Once you've got that up and running, hit the little X. Do not quit it, just close it. Once we've got that closed, we are heading to Beekeeper. This is all the steps of getting the database up and running and connected to it. We're going to double click on local DB. And we are going to, give me 1 second. Once we are in Beekeeper, we are going to hit the little plus button. Doesn't matter what database we're connected to, as long as we're connected to a database. We are going to create our database called chat.
Max, I don't have a local DB.
Do you have any saved connection in the top left? All right, give me 1 second.
Take your time.
Create database chat. You're going to hit the run button. You will get no results, 0 out of 0 rows affected. Hit the little refresh up here. Once you hit the refresh, go down to the chat. Make sure that you've got this information schema. And finally, delete out this command, create database chat. That will cause you issues down the road if you're trying to create database again. So once you have this chat done, delete out the command so we've got an empty query space going on. Once you get all of that done, red light. Jen, share your screen. Oh, you're good. Just hit the plus to open a new tab and create database chat. All lower on that. And run. Then refresh in the top left. Then open your dropdown and change it to chat. Then delete out the create database chat and you are all caught up. Anyone else need help?
Yeah, I can't find my chat for some reason.
Can't find your what?
The when I hit refresh, I didn't get the chat off to the corner.
Share your screen. Oh, somehow you already have a chat database?
Yeah, I had ran it, but for some oh, never mind. I'm tripping.
Sure are. That's why we do that last step, delete out your create database chat, just to make sure you don't accidentally rerun it. Anyone else need help? You ready for another red light? Okay, red light. Oh, never mind, Shannon.
I have red writing. It says there's a problem that the database already exists, which I know we just looked at, but I don't know where to go to fix it.
Refresh in the top left, and then you should have a drop down right to the left of that and change that to chat.
Now I don't have, it told me I had it, now I don't have one.
Share your
So,
screen.
okay.
Oh, you're already in it. Oh, well, I think it's because you're already in it. If I change it to something else and then change it back to that, yeah, you're already in it.
Okay, so everything's fine.
Yes.
I hate everything. Okay.
Welcome to full stack development. Okay. Red light. We've created our database. We've got that all set up. We've got our front end, but our front end's over on its own. We've got our back end that's now running in the terminal, but not connected. And then we got our database over in Postgres, but we haven't connected any of that. So this is a short red, green, red for now. We now need to connect our database in. So we're going to go down below our server and we're going to say const db equals a new pg.client. Make sure you've got your casing right. For some reason, PG likes a capital C there. I wouldn't agree with it. It's not how I would do it. That's how they do it. So we've got to do it that way. We've got to tell it what database to connect to. So we say database is connecting to our chat database. We then, now that we've configured the client, we need to tell the client to connect. So we throw in our DB connect, green light. If you save the file and you still have server online at port 3010 after you scroll down to the bottom, you are good to go.
Max, could you just say what line 13 is doing again, please?
This is configuring the connection to the database, but it's not actually telling it to connect. It's just telling it where to connect. So this is what's actually like telling the client, okay, I've told you where to go to connect. Now go use that. And if we didn't have this configured properly, don't follow me on this, but if I just said like cha, you can see it throws an error and it says fatal. And then if I scroll up a little bit, it will say database error, database cha does not exist. Well, if I don't try and connect to the database, if I just say, hey, there's a client, but don't actually go open the connection, you'll notice it works fine. So this is configuring it, but it's not actually opening the connection until we put in that DB connect, and that is what is making it all work. Flash, you might want to drop that link in the back channel just so that it is accessible after class.
The newsletter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone good? Everyone have their server online at 3010? Okay. This is going to be a longer red light, but I don't want you to panic here. We're going to create a bunch of different files. All of them are going to be empty, but we're going to create our files to get started. So, 1 second. So, this is one of the first React apps. To do doesn't really count that we're doing from the ground up. And when we think about this, we want to think about our reusable components. And you guys have had a taste of this with your capstone, right? You've started to go, all right, well, this nav bar is one giant component. So I should make that its own file. And then this little section is going to be repeated over and over again. So we should make that their own files. So ideally, we would actually wireframe this whole project out. And we would think about this and I'd go, all right, in a chat app, what do I need? Well, an app is kind of weird unless it has a header. So we're going to throw a header at the top. Then what's in a traditional chat app? Well, we're going to not think about multiple messages. We're going to think about this as just messages with one person sent and received. So we're going to limit it down and we're going to say, all right, we don't have like a list that you would get on your phone where you pick who you're going to text. This is just going to be like that screen that opens after that. Okay, now inside that screen, we've got sent messages and those show up on the right. And then we've got received messages and those show up over on the left. but there are a lot of them, so we should think about that as a component. And then finally, what do we have going on down at the bottom? We need some kind of input down at the bottom, and that input probably needs a send button as well. So I'm already starting to detect there are lots of different files that we need to create here. So let's go through and break that down. Red light, don't follow yet. I just mentioned we need a header. So I'm going to create my header.js. Then I'm going to have all of my messages in a list, right? That's where all the message content is going to show up. Then inside that messages list, I'm going to have two different things going on. I'm going to have a sent message and a received message. Then down at the bottom, I also need my message input. Inside of all of those, yellow light, you can start to catch up with me. I need to set up components. So in each one of them, I'm just going to return out an empty div and export the default message input or whatever the name of the component is. I'm copying and pasting here. You guys know this syntax inside and out. You don't need to do it from scratch. So in every one of these files, I am creating something that returns out a div. Oh, come on. Be careful with your singular and your plurals. They will come back to bite you. The files that you should have, I'm posting in the chat, are header, message input, messages list, received message, and sent message. If you would like to play a drinking game, count all the times I spell received wrong. I promise you, this is the 5th time I've done this project. Spell it wrong every single time.
Did we name our header header, or is it under a different name?
No, we named our header.
Okay.
Anyone need another minute? Okay. If it makes you feel any better, the startup company that I work at is basically creates bots for the healthcare industry. So we actually have a chat message interface that we use at work, and I'm in the process of refactoring all of this. Our code is a little bit heavier in that we can have like different response types, so people can like click on buttons to respond instead of typing in a message. But I quite literally was working on an interface just like this at a full-time job. So this is even though it feels like a little playground thing that you're learning from, this is a very real world thing for me. All right, we good? Yes, and Sasha, along those lines. We basically support free response, or if there are less than 8 options, we show buttons. And then if there are more than 8 options, we show a drop down. And then we give our writers the ability to control whether it should always be a free response button or if they have to select from one of the options that are on the screen. So the whole interface is built around that to make sure that what the user sees is what our writers intend to put out. And depending on how it goes, maybe on Thursday, I can actually show you some of that code running in real life. Okay, so red light, created our files. We need to start from the top down, but I don't create anything without Bootstrap. That's not true. I usually always use Bootstrap. Bootstrap's an important framework. So I'm going to my public, I'm going to my index.html, I'm going to get the Bootstrap URL, I'm going to my docs, I'm going to copy the link tag. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to go down to the bottom, and I'm going to paste that in. And while I am here in my title tag, I might as well update that to messages app. If you want to do both of those steps and turned around, you can do them quickly before you forget. We'll paste the link in the chat. Public index.html. Don't forget those steps. After you're done those two, another red light. So I'm in my app.js and I've got all of these components set up. So I'm working from the top down. I can't see what I'm doing in any of these components though, unless I include them in my app. So I'm going to include my header in here. Once I get my header in, I have to remember to import it. This is all on a red light. Import my header, and then I have to go build my header. So I go to my header, and I'm like, all right, how do I want this to work? Well, I want it to be centered. Your header will not show up if you... Oh, sorry, I hijacked some ports. Let me go give those back. 3,000. Okay, your React port should be unhijacked now. Okay, so I want to center it. It's going to be an H1, and it's going to say my messages. So I save, I come over, I look, and I've got a centered H1 with my messages. So I'm feeling good there. Now I've got to do my messages list, and this gets kind of complicated. I need my messages list to show up. So I'm going to put in my messages list. And autocomplete hates me because I don't know why it's bipolar, but it seems to be. So put in our messages list. Now there's nothing inside of that. So what do I want to show up inside of that? Well, I need to test two different things. I need a sent message to show up, and I also need a received message to show up. Because I need both of those, I need to go import them, and imports are back to working. Thank you very much, VS Code. Okay. Now I need to go build the CSS for those, or the message content. So I'm going to go to my, let's start with a message I received. So I need to think through, what does a received message include in it? Well, I will know that I want my received messages to be over here and my sent messages to be over here. So we're going to start out with everything in a row. And because we want our received messages to show up on the left, I don't want them over on the right side. So I'm going to say, hey, these messages can only get to a col 10. Those last two I don't want to show up. And then I'm going to put in a span, and I'm going to throw a class name on that called message text. And I'm going to say received message text goes here. I save, and I get that showing up. And I'm like, that looks like shit. We want to make that look like a little message bubble. So let's do that. I'm going to head into my app.css. Now, because all of this CSS, that the final project is going to end up at under 50 lines, I'm not breaking this out. But in your projects, because you're working on multiple pages, you may want to be using Sass. That is okay. If you are creating multiple CSS files, that is totally fine. This, because it's all a single page app, I'm going to do it all in my app.css. So I'm going to say, all right, go target my message text. My message text that I just put right here. And that message text is going to have a background color of blue. And that text is going to be really hard to read. So I'm going to do a color of white. I'm going to throw a little padding on there. And I'm going to make it a rounded border radius. And I will stop there. So I've got my received message text goes here. Green light. The files that I have edited are my app.css, which I'm going to throw down at the bottom. My received message.js. Amberlyn, come in. Mel, can you grab both the front end and back end live shares for Amberlyn? I also have modified my messages list and my app.js. I am crazy because I'm going to try and fit all of them onto the screen. Okay. Those are all 4 of the files that I have edited so far, plus the header, which I'm not going to fit on the screen. Take a step back, make sure you're understanding these steps, right? Make a component, make sure that component shows up, get the content in the component. Make another component, make sure it shows up, then try and figure out, all right, what needs to be styled here?
My received messages are acting kind of funky.
Share your screen. In the live share, does it actually break out the windows the way that I have them open? Oh, that's less fun. You've got a semicolon on line 6. And you can't return 2 divs. So take that final closing div and put it all the way at the end, and that should fix the problem. On line 6, you're closing out the opening div. Inside the parenthesis. And that should, maybe you have too many divs. Div. Here, if we, hold on, if we make it what it's supposed to be, which is just the col 10 inside the row, that div, that div, that div, and that div, we're returning, and we're missing a parenthesis. There you go. Oh, you might want to reboot your React server, but at least that file is good to go. You might need, yeah, I would click in your terminal, Control C to stop, and then up enter to restart and see if that fixes it. Enter. No. Okay, so cannot resolve received message. It's also mad about your header. You do have, but it's the messages list, received message. You spell received like I do, sir. Incorrectly. There you go. Jen, you're up.
Thanks.
No problem.
I think mine's doing the same thing.
Penny, if you're missing the my messages, that's in the header file. I just threw each one in there that's text centered.
Right, I have failed to compile.
Share your screen so we can see.
I know it's in here somewhere.
Well, you did spell received correctly.
I even get through, I had to capitalize the M on sent messages.js, but it's still.
Received message, received. Open sesame. Received message. Received messages.
That's why.
Sure is.
Thank you.
Danny, what's up?
I'm broken. I'm going to share my screen.
Go for it. I feel like with your laptops, we should also give you like a help button that you can just smack and it will automatically raise your hand. You cannot find a received message because, oh, you're really going to hate me on this one.
Oh,
You have a
Lord.
space at the beginning of your file name. And the only way I know that is because you see how this is the top file. It's not alphabetically sorted. So if we rename this, it says leading or trailing white space detected. All we need to do is take out that space.
Oh my gosh. Seriously, good Lord, thank you.
I would. What, Ken?
I still got the red squiggly under import sent messages from dot sent message.
That's okay, as long as the terminal is working. That's something that Shannon and I actually ran into. There was a red squiggly for no good reason, and we had to quit VS Code. And then when we reopened VS Code, the red squiggly went away. So VS Code needs to go into a timeout. It doesn't always appreciate when we rename files. Allie, if your code's removing the parentheses, that's okay, as long as it's working. The parentheses are optional in React.
Did we do anything in the terminal, like start it up or anything?
No, it should be running, and you should be able to see your changes in the browser.
Is it localhost 310? No, it's 3000.
3000, because we haven't started on the back end yet.
Did you put the my messages in the header, .js?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a each one with a text center here that says my messages, and then I am using that in the app.js right here. Everyone good? Anyone need another minute? All right, we're gonna do one more push before break. It is annoying the crap out of me that message is right at the edge of the screen. So I'm gonna go back to my app.js and throw in my container. Now I get nice spacing on the side, and I can go back in and clean that up down the road. I also want to get my sent message working. So I'm going to pop that open. It's on a yellow light. Proceed at your own risk if you would like to follow along. So my received message, I already know is on the right track. It has a lot of the styling in it that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow most of this. I am going to put it in a div class name row. Then I am going to say, hey, in that row, I'm going to put an empty col2. This is empty on purpose. That's just pushing over the message so it shows up over on the right. I am then going to put in my class name col10. And I want all of the text to show up at the end. I basically want this text to be right justified. And I'm going to say sent message text goes here. And I'm going to go ahead and save that and see what that looks like. And that's showing up, but it doesn't have any of the styling that I want on it. So the styling is all coming from my class name message text. So I'm going to put in a span for that. And I'm going to make sure all of that text is inside that span. And now it shows up, but wrong color. So I need something to differentiate this. To differentiate this, I'm going to add yet another class to this that says sent message text. Then in my CSS, I am going to say, hey, my sent message text nope, put that in the wrong spot. That should be down here in the span. My sent message text is going to have a background color of light gray. I save that, I come over here, nothing works, the world hates me. Sent message text, sent message text. Helps if I spelled it right. On the right track, we just need to throw in a color of black. Get my black message text showing up there, and I am good to go. So I'm going to close out some of these files. Green light if you were not following along. The only changes that we made were in sentMessage.js. We put all of that crap in, and we added in this sent message text class name. Once you have an interface that looks like this, you are good to go. When we come back from break, we will get our input showing up. We will start integrating in some state and props, and then we will get full stack E. Get the database connected. Your final version should look like this. I will try and fit everything on the screen if I can. Got that going. You're good to go. Go on break. If not, I will stick around for a couple minutes. Plush, I added in app.js. I threw a container on that very parent div, and that fixed all of my side margins. Because I'm a lazy mofo.
Can I ask an unrelated question?
Shoot.
So is there gonna be like some sort of like quiz or a little like module at the end that kind of like goes over the requirements thing again, the thing that we did in the first week, kind of map out sort of like, to hit the project management side of it a bit?
No.
It's like when I was building that WordPress site, like I like really felt a little need for that soft skill.
From like a Trello, scoping out a project, planning how to do a bigger one.
Yeah, breaking it down, what's needed, how to categorize with what. I know it like comes with more like experience, but like, is there an
I think
article?
what Shannon is saying in the chat is that she'd like to be put in front of a client and make sure that she can handle communications effectively under pressure. Let me think on that one.
Okay.
It is let me pause the recording. Okay. Let's figure out where we are at. Okay, so we got our sent message and our received message. Not the best UI. We could do some CSS. We could clean that up. Not the point of tonight's class, right? Point of tonight's class, just get something full stack working in the chat app. So that's what we're going to power through. We need to do one final thing, though, on our interface. We've got no way of typing in a message and hitting send. So we got to fix that. So I'm going to close out of my sent message. I'm going to get rid of my app.css. I'm going to go back to my app, and we're missing the third thing that we need in here. Red light, by the way. We'll catch up on this in a minute. So I'm going to throw in my message input. Mel, can you put the front end and back end live shares? Thank you. No, it can disconnect some people. Okay, I put in my message input. I'm going to import my message input. Now I need to put something in my message input. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go down and I'm going to change my div here to a form. And in that form, I'm going to put it in a row. And I will say, all right, I want an input to show up in there. The type is going to be text. The class name is form control. This is a really great CSS bootstrap hack. Whenever you are working with form inputs, throw a form control in on there. It makes the styling look 100 times better. So that's just a really good thing whenever you're using an input. And we're also going to, I'm realizing I did not put that in a column. So that is going to go in a col 10. And we'll close that div off down here. And I've made something angry. I missed my closing form. And then I'm going to do another col 2. And we'll do a button with a type of submit because we're in a form. And a class name, and we will do a BTN and a BTN success. If you were wondering where I'm pulling those class names from, those are all coming from Bootstrap. So I save, I come over, and I've got my input, but it's right at the top. I'm like, no, I want that to be down at the bottom. So it might be tempting, still red light on this, to take this input and just fix it down to the bottom. But then what happens when we start to scroll? When I start to scroll and have a lot of different messages, I want the scroll to be contained in this area. I don't want the messages to go on top of my input and then also be below my input. So we get a little creative here. What we basically do is we figure out what the height should be of the messages, and then we subtract out whatever the height of the input bar is and whatever the height of the header is. So that's what we're going to do. If I go to my messages list, I'm going to put an ID on this of messages list. Then I'm going to head into my app.css, target my messages list, and say, hey, the min height of this is going to be, actually, we'll just use regular height because we want it to scroll if it's above that height. And we're going to calculate it based off of 100% of the viewport height, the VH, minus whatever the height of the header is, minus whatever the height of the message input bar is. Let's just guess 140. Close. Got a little bit more space down here. So I'll say 160. Nope, other direction. 120. Now I've got that down at the bottom. We can even go down 110. There we go. Now I've got that anchored down at the bottom. And when I pull these up, it stays anchored down at the bottom there. Okay, green light, 3 things that I have changed. I threw in my messages list in my app.css. I threw in my ID messages list on my JS. And I also created my message input file with my columns down at the bottom. Rain, we are doing something new tonight. We are playing a game of stoplight, red light, green light. When it's red light, you just go along with it. When it's a green light, you catch up on the code. And when it's a yellow, I haven't made up my mind, so proceed with caution. Palash, you asked, why did we not use fixed for the input? We could fix the input down at the bottom, but what happens when we have 100 messages in here? The problem when we fix it at the bottom is the content above it is going to go either on top of or below the input. And we're going to get some weird scrolling going on with the messages showing up behind it. Now, you can get a little hacky there. You could say, oh, I'm going to put a background color of white on my fixed bar down at the bottom, and I'm going to make sure that that is like going all the way to the edges and a width 100%. You might be okay there, but I like thinking about it more of, hey, I'm going to use this area and I'm going to say that height is fixed. So if there is anything that goes outside of that height, I'm going to get a scroll bar, but I know that that area is not going to intrude down here on my message input. You ask 10 different CSS developers how to make this interface, and you're going to get 10 different answers. So take it with a grain of salt. This is not the only way to do it. You could definitely make it work with the fixed. I just find this way causes less issues with scrolling down the road. And that's kind of the nice thing about Ryan coming back in next week is you're going to see how Ryan does React. And the way that Ryan does React is not the same way that I do React. That's not to say that my way is better or his way is better, but you'll get that experience of seeing how other people code, how other people manage their full stack, what their flow is like, all of that stuff. All right, are we good here? All right.
Max, I'm not getting the input at the bottom of mine.
Make sure in your app.js that you've put in your message input component.
That would be it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I can't keep it all on the screen.
Max, could you repeat the things you just told? Oh.
Yep. Make sure you've got your message input in your app.js. We did all of the work to make the form show up and the input and all of that, but because it's a component, the component doesn't know where to show up. So we've got to make sure that we're importing and then actually using that component in our app.js. Danny, avoid building for now. Building is the process of finishing development and actually you build during the deployment process. You'll be learning about how to do that with Nate. But if everything looks right in the terminal, you can avoid that build command. If it doesn't, then we need to dig into that.
Can I share? For some reason, mine is still up.
Yep. Oh, in messages list.js, we added an ID on line 6 of messages list. And then in the CSS, that's where we applied our height.
Okay. Let me try that.
And if that doesn't work, you can definitely share.
I'm sorry. Where did you say was that again? I'm sorry.
No problem. Messages list, we added this ID in so that we knew where to apply the styling. And then over in app CSS, we set our height over here.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm good to go.
Cool. Anyone else need help?
If my send button is like beneath my bar, is that because the web page is too spaced out, or is that?
Check your row calls. Make sure it's a row. Make sure that the form tag is in the right spot. Make sure you've got a call 10 and a call 2. And if all of that looks right, let me know and you can share a screen. Everyone good? Anyone need a minute?
I found it.
browser should look like this, Tara.
Okay, yeah, mine doesn't. I just gotta figure out why.
Do you want to
does-
share your screen?
Okay.
Let me request remote. This is always the hard part in the program for me, where like I have to figure out how you lay out your windows, and it's like, nope, that's mine. All right. Okay, messages list. Got your messages list. That's good. In your app.css, you've got your messages list. Calc is the most annoying thing in the world. They require a space on either side of it, and it drives me nuts. So all that it was that space.
All right, thank you.
Like everything else, I get the computer being picky about, but a space on one side of the that drives me crazy. Anyone else need help? All right. The good news is we are done with our interface. We are done with our CSS for now. The bad news is we've got to get more React-y, and we've got to get more full stack-y. So the order that we're going to do this is not the order the computer runs all of this. The order that we are going to do this is the order that it makes sense to us to do as developers. So we're going to dive into that. Red light. What we want to do is make sure that we've got our database talking to our backend. Pause, make sure that's working. Then get our backend communicating to our front end. Pause, make sure that's working. Then make whatever is all the way back in the database show up in our application. So we're going to do a bunch of red light, green lights to do each one of those steps. So red light for now. First thing we need to do is get a message into the database. So we're going to head to Beekeeper. Red light still. I don't have a messages table. We can't put any data into the database unless we have some messages. So I'm going to create table messages. And what goes into my messages table? Well, I always need an ID, and that's going to be a serial auto increment. I need, of course, the message text of the database. Let's call that content, and that is going to be a data type of text. Notice we aren't using a varchar there for the first time. A varchar is limited to 255 characters. A user may write a lot more than that, right? So we're going to use that text data type. Why wouldn't we always use the text data type? Well, oftentimes whatever we're putting into our database is actually shorter, and that's much more efficient for the database to keep track of. So if there's the possibility of going over 255, you use text. If you can keep the user under 255 for things like first name and address and email and stuff like that, preferably you use that varchar. And finally, we need to know whether or not they sent that message or not. So we're going to make that a Boolean. Okay, I go ahead and I hit the run button there. And this is an auto increment. This is supposed to be primary key. I'm so glad we are red lighted. I hit the run button and I get my messages table over here. Green light. All you're doing is creating your table messages.
Does there need to be a comma after Boolean or no?
No, because it's the last column.
Okay.
It's kind of like grammar and saying it's this or this or this. You don't put a comma at the end of the third one.
Is there a reason we capitalize a lot of it?
Not real. Yes and no. SQL doesn't care what we capitalize unless it's in quotes. If it's in quotes and it's recognizing it as content, it will remember that casing. What we normally do is if it's a SQL keyword like create table, serial, primary key, text, Boolean, those are all like reserved words to SQL, right? They know what that means. So we capitalize those, and then anything else we tend to put in lowercase so we can separate out like the syntax in the command from what things we are putting into that command. However, if you did that all in lowercase, SQL would run it and wouldn't care and do the exact same thing. And sometimes I get lazy and don't capitalize it because I'm on a roll and it still works. So it's just more to make it easier for us to read than it is about the computer.
Thank you.
Should I have so underneath my messages,
Mhm.
there's like a to-dos table. Should that be there?
That's fine. You can just go ahead and hit like the close button on the tab and that will make it go away. It's not, when we change databases, it's not clearing out like our old queries, which is okay. Okay. Now that we've got, anyone need a minute? Everyone good? Okay. Now that we've got a message, we need to do our read step, but we can't really read anything from the database unless we have one created. So we're going to go through the steps of getting the database set up to send a message in. But before we can do that, we want to make sure that this whole connection is working. So I'm going to double click on the messages table. You can green light on this one. You can follow me on this one. Double click on messages, click on the little plus down at the bottom. I'm going to leave my ID blank because I made it serial, because I made it the primary key. It knows what to do on that. But for my content, I'm going to say my first message in the database. And for my sent, I am going to say true. I am then going to add one more message that says a message that I received. And I'm going to set that one to false. Now, you got to remember, whenever you're working in Beekeeper, the green means that it actually hasn't been saved into the database yet. We have to come down and hit the apply button down at the bottom. Once we do that, we've got our 2 in the database.
Max, how did you get that second green line?
Plus button again, down at the bottom right. Don't forget to hit the apply button if you have it. That will turn your rows from green back to a regular color, and we are good to go. Everyone good? Randy, can I help? I can read lips. I'm pretty bad at it, but when you say no, even though you're on mute, I can still see that you're saying no.
I'm fine. I'm just like a half step behind and losing my whole patience.
Okay. Plus buttons, type in the text, apply. That's all.
So Max, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So we are doing our own, this is where we will be putting our information. Like if we send up our own API.
If you're setting up your own database, yeah, it's fine to load it up this way. This is kind of the developer's perspective though, right? So for an actual application, we wouldn't ever tell our client like, oh, just go in the database and add that information, because there's all kinds of havoc they can wreak. So instead, what we would do is we would make a new page for them as an administrator, where they could go in, fill out a form and hit the save button and have that save into the database. So long-term for this application, we're never going to be entering our messages into the database. They're going to actually be coming over here, typing in the message, hit send, and have that put it into the database. But this is the process of called seeding the database, right? We are planting the seed of the very first data that we want to be in there. so that we can test with it, so we can do all of that. And then eventually we would get to the point where our interface would control all of that. So Beekeeper is always meant to be more of a developer tool. We don't normally load our data into that. But if you are building up your own database and don't have an interface for loading that data in yet, it is completely fine to load it in manually here. Yes. We aren't using an API yet, Ali. That's what we're going to connect to in a second. Has nothing to do with hosting it on our own computer. The front end can never talk to the database directly. It always needs to go through the layer of the API, because the API is the one that's going to control access and login and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the very next step that we're going to do, is get that data flowing all the way to our front end through our API. Okay, we good? Okay, red light. So I need to put my back end or my front end aside. So I'm going to minimize my front end. I'm doing this all in my back end code. I need to set up a new endpoint for my front end to be able to access the database. So I'm going to say server.get my messages. And I know, because I'm going to the database is always async. So we put that async keyword in there as a precursor, knowing that I'm going to need my await. And my const result is going to come from awaiting the DB from right here that we're already connected to, and we're going to query it, and we are going to say select star from my messages. And in order to test and make sure that's working, I'm going to copy that, go over to my Beekeeper, go into a query, and paste that in. Notice I commented out my create table because I didn't want that to run. All of my data is showing up here the way that I want it to. So I know my SQL query is working. If something's going to break, I want to confirm, hey, whatever SQL I'm running, make sure that that SQL actually works. Now that I know it does, I can res.send back my messages, which is coming from my result.rows. Still red light. This is all that we've added. We need to add one more thing. I'm going to test to make sure this is working. I'm going to go to my local host 3001, and I'm going to go get my messages. And when I hit enter on that, not only do I get my messages, I get them in JSON. We know how to work with JSON. Green light. All we added in was the server get. Once you've got that added in, go open a new tab, go localhost 3010/messages, and make sure your messages show up.
Can you pop up your Beekeeper again?
I just put the select in here. You don't have to test that step, but if you want to, you can. Can he share your screen? scroll down to the bottom of your terminal. Aha. Your terminal is starting with node server.js. So it is not node modding, which means it's not rebooting when you make changes. That's because you don't have where's your node modules and your package.json and all of the stuff that comes with it. You did the same thing that someone else did, one of the other students did. You've got two backends and that's causing you problems. So we're gonna copy everything that's in this server.js. We're gonna close it. We're gonna open the right chat backend. Shannon, I thought it was you. I just didn't want to throw you under a bus. We're gonna go to server.js. We're gonna put all of the right stuff in here. This is the one with the package.json that has everything in it that we need. So we're gonna delete this one. We're gonna open in integrated terminal. We're gonna npm start it. And because we've got the right command in package.json, the npx command is running, which also means that if we go back to Chrome and refresh, you get all of your messages.
Why don't ours look like yours? Ours are all
I'm special.
squished at the top. Yeah. Share your secrets, oh wise one.
Fine, I guess I can share. It's almost like I do this for a full-time job in addition to Hack Upstate. There is a lovely Chrome extension called JSON Formatter that I just put in the chat that you can install if you would like. And that, after you install it and enable it and close the tab and reopen the tab, it will give you the option to have this like raw up at the top, which will look the way yours does, and then go into parsed. And the other nice thing that this does is you can like collapse down the items and see more of the data. Well, Shannon, aren't you special? Is it not working for you? Do you have the raw and parse? You're still on mute if you're talking to us.
Oh, no, everything's fine. I just went to download it and it was like, do you want to remove it from Chrome? And I was like, no.
Oh, I'm guessing based off of Amberlynn's comment that Ryan may have already showed you that. And it was probably like a in-passing comment that some of you quickly grabbed and installed. But yes, it is a very nice extension.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to do our last full stack step. And then there's a bunch of other full stack steps we need to do. But we're going to get our full stack connection working. Red light. We've got our data showing up in our messages. We now need to get that data showing up in our front end. We're going to break that up into two steps. We're going to go back to our front end code, which I happen to have minimized. I'm going to close out of a ton of crap. And all the way up at my app.js, I'm going to put in a use effect. My use effect, first thing I do, put in the comma and the array. Do not forget this. You will get an infinite re-rendering loop if you do not put those in. Make sure you put that in. Then we are going to const make our API call, which is going to be async because I'm needing to use fetch. We're going to make the API call. Then we are going to get our response from awaiting a fetch to our HTTP localhost 3010/messages. That is going to get our data by awaiting our response.json. and then we are going to console log out our data.messages. Once we do that, if we head in, nothing has changed here yet, but if I go to my inspect and look in my console, I can see my array of messages. Now, before we greenlight, where do I need to put this data in order for React to show it? Into state. Whenever we have data that is going to be displayed to the end user, we need state. So I'm also going to say my messages and my set messages are going to come from a use state that starts out with an empty array. But because we have that data and we are setting our messages into that state variable, where do I actually need this data? Where do I want to use these messages? I want to use it in my messages list. How do I send that in there? I need to use a prop. Green light, but I'm going to explain this. We are getting our messages. Let me draw our messages from the backend. We're storing that into our response. We're using the response to get the JSON out, putting that into our data. Our data is accessing the messages object and setting that into messages. Messages is coming in from state and getting updated here. We then take those messages, send them in right here as a prop called messages. Okay, now green light, you can catch up on this. Don't forget to add this prop down here. Messages list won't know what the messages are unless we send it in as a prop. While you're catching up, it is important that we're doing this up in app. In previous cohorts, I've made everyone suffer. When we put the messages list, we make the API call directly in there. And that seems fine and it will work on the surface. But what happens when we send a new message? Well, we're sending a new message down in message input. How can message input tell its sibling messages list that there's a new message that we need to send into it? We can't. So what we have to do is a concept called state hoisting. We have to hoist the state out of messages list and instead put it up in the parent component. Because we have our use state up in the parent, both the messages list and message input can share that state using props. So whenever we're designing our application, if there are two different components that need to be able to use or update the state, you have to move that state up into a parent component so that both children components can share. If everything is working in your browser, only in the console, these messages won't have updated yet, but only in the console, you should be able to see the data that is in your database. Everyone good? Corin, you're a failure, or your API is. Go ahead, share your screen. So this is the nature of full stack debugging. Lots of different places for this to go wrong, right? So we start here. We are looking at our 3010 and that looks right. We're going to messages. Everything looks right there. So I'm going to switch back over to here. And we've got our messages. We're listening on 3010, but, and I'm just going to check. If you note in our server isn't actually running yet. So we have to do our npm run start again, or npm start. The run's optional. And it's crashing because you've got it running somewhere else. And it's not in any of these terminal windows. So we're going to close some of these. Do you have a terminal open anywhere else? Nope, that's your front end terminal. Anything else?
Not really that I can see.
Okay. You're gonna make it hard on me. That's fine. I see how it is. We are going to stop both terminals. Can you switch to your front end terminal and hit Control-C on it? Then we are going into the abyss of Activity Monitor, and we're going to go find any places that you're running Node. Oh, that's weird. Sorry. It pulled it up on mine. So this is your runaway port. If we go ahead and force quit that, that will make it go away. And then we can restart your, always want to restart the back end first. So restart the back end. Oh. You got two listens because they were listening on each other and canceling each other out. The listen should be down at the bottom though. So running on 3000, Ali already beat you to, it should be result.rows, not .row. And then go restart your front end and see if that fixes it. Good to go? Cool. Anyone else need? Oh, Ali.
Okay, yeah, so I just had a quick question. So with just so like I can like understand state. So when we send that prop in as messages, that's basically like us sending the data, which is messages. Okay,
Yes.
so that we can use it in messages list.
Yes. So two things. Messages is tied to messages. That is tied to set messages, which is tied to set messages, which is tied to data.messages, which is coming from our data, which is coming from our fetch, which is coming from our response. Our response is coming from our messages. So this messages here lines up with this messages here. That means that we eventually get that from our result. That's coming in from our database. That's coming from our messages table. So hypothetically, we could call our messages table something different from where we're storing our result, which we are. We could then call our whatever we're sending back to the front end. We could call this Oompa Loompas if we wanted to, as long as when we parsed our JSON, we refer to those Oompa Loompas here. We could then call, as long as it was Oompa Loompas here, we could call this Willy Wonka here. We could call this set Willy Wonkas, and we could call it Willy Wonka here. And then down here, we could call it Willy Wonka and send it in as chocolate as the prop in here. However, you can see how Oompa Loompas, Willy Wonka, and chocolate would get really confusing. Why did I pick those three? God only knows how my brain works. But for whatever reason, maybe it's the new Willy Wonka movie coming out. That flow is different. So this is the prop value. That is what's coming in from our state. The prop name we are calling messages here. Amberlynn, did you not know there's a new movie coming out?
I had no idea.
Timothy Chalamet is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
Looks really, really good. We'll watch the trailer at the end of class. Looks really good. So we can call all of these different things, and sometimes when we're keeping track of that data, it makes sense to separate them out, but naming convention is to keep it all consistent. So even though this messages and this set messages are tied together, even though this is tied together over here, we try and keep a consistent thread all the way through so that when we call it messages, we know, oh, even though that's coming from the API, that's coming from the database, it's getting set into state, it's getting sent down into the messages, we just have one consistent name for it. But to answer your initial question, Allie, yes, you are correct. We are sending in messages from the state here into messages list as a prop called messages. So yes, you were spot on that. Okay, now we got to do something with it because our data is locked away in the console. So we're going to messages list. We're going to our parentheses up here, red light, by the way, don't follow yet. In here, we are going to say, hey, we are going to get our messages from our messages prop. We are then going to comment out these two things, and we are going to go to our messages and map over them. That is going to give me access to each individual message, but now I've got a problem. I have my messages, and some of the messages are sent messages, and some of the messages are received messages. How do I know that? Well, if I go look at my data has this thing called sent, true, or false. So I can actually use conditional rendering here. I can say if the message was a sent message, return out my sent message, and I need to put a key on it because I'm mapping over it. So I'll use the message ID for that. Else, it was a received message, and so I can return out my received message with a key of message ID as well. So I save that, still a red light. I come over, and it looks like nothing has changed. And I'm like, okay. I'm going to go back into my beekeeper and just test something here. You don't have to do this. I'm going to add in another message and say my third message. And I'm going to set my false and apply. When I refresh over here, all of a sudden, I have a third message, but it doesn't have any of the content in it that's showing up here. Anyone have an idea of how to fix that? Ooh, we need messages.content. So if I console log out my message here, and I look in the browser, I can see my ID, my content, and my sent false. But I can't just shove the content in here because I still want to use my sent message and my received message. So what do I do instead? Else if what? How did I solve the problem of having my data up in app and not having it down in my messages list? I used a prop. I have to use that prop again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send in the content from my message.content. And I'm also going to send in, and this is another way of doing it, I could also just send in the whole message. Two ways of accomplishing the exact same thing. So we now need to go tell our sent message, hey, you are going to get a prop and you are getting the props and making the content show up. We also need to do that in our received message, but our received message is getting our message. And our message contains the content. Two ways of doing this. Up here, I'm digging into the content, which is an object, and sending in only that content. Down here, I'm sending it the whole message. Then down at the child level, I'm digging into that content. Two different ways of doing it. We also are seeing two different syntaxes. Here, I'm getting all of my props without curly braces. Here, I added in the curly braces, which is breaking out my props and getting access to the keys getting sent in. That means after all of this, when I save and go back over to Chrome, I have my messages showing. Last thing I'm going to do, this is totally optional. The messages are on top of each other and they're driving me nuts. So I'm going to go find my rows, and I'm going to throw a little margin on the bottom of them of 10 pixels. And that spaces them out a little bit and makes me not feel insane, and I'm good to go. I don't know how I can keep all of this on my screen. Green light, quick refresh of everything that we did. In messages list, I added my messages prop. Then I put in my map. I used an if statement to say if it's a sent message, return out the sent message component. And if it's a received message, use that component instead. From there, I use my sent message props to make the props.content show up. Then I did it a little differently in my received message. In my received message, I put in my message. I sent the entire object down. I captured that object, then used .content here. Two different ways of accessing the props, two different things that I'm sending into that. One, I'm sending the whole message down. The other one, I'm sending just the content of that message down. Finally, I targeted my row and put in a margin of 10px on the bottom to make the messages spread out. And this is our final result.
Can you flip back to your code, please? Thank you.
Can't keep it all on the screen, but I think this is the best I can do. Oh, can I? Yeah, I can go down on this. That's the best I can do. Sorry. you can see the message content of both your sent and received messages in the browser based off of what content you have in the database. Take the last 10 minutes. Think about what your light bulb moment has been in this class. Send that to me as a direct message in the Zoom chat, and you can get out of here. If it is not working, I'm happy to stick around, help you guys debug, but this is a ton of content. We just did our first full stack React app, something useful. We haven't done an insert yet. Got a little bit more to go there. There's a more efficient way we can be working with the database. We're going to touch on that a little bit, but make sure you understand how this flow is working. We're going to document tomorrow. We're going to go through, we're going to put all those numbers in. This project does not go away. Coming back to this, going to keep on working on it. But for now, what's it going to take for the last 3 hours to sink in? I want you to use the last 10 minutes of class to figure that out. Send that to me in a direct message, and you can get out of here if your messages are showing the content that is in your Beekeeper. Corwin, what's up?
I feel like it just has to do something with the fact that I can't spell, but my props isn't defined in my send message.
Let's prop you up. Share your screen. Okay. Props is not defined means that in your sent message, we have to give it a heads up that you're sending in some props. That do it?
That done did it. Thank you.
Think about your light bulb moment. Think about what it's going to take for this to sink in. Send me a direct message in Zoom and get out. Shannon, you're up.
Everything's very angry.
That's what you want at 8:22 p.m.
Yes.
It did not get the memo that I green lighted you.
No.
Where is it angry?
No, wait. I don't like apples.
Well, I don't like oranges. I'm just kidding. I love oranges.
They are really good. They're my favorite.
Everything's
Okay, can you
there.
see?
Okay, I gotcha. So we're gonna head to, other than it being very angry, we're gonna read why it's angry. It says messages list dot map is not a function on messages list line 6. So it's telling us precisely in messages list line 6 that we're trying to loop over something. What are we trying to map over? We're trying to map over the messages that we sent in right here. But we're not sending in a message, we're sending in messages. Then we tell it, hey, you are going to get those messages from the app.js, and that's what we want to loop. Oh, that is what we want to map over.
Okay. That looks better.
So now you've got your messages and you're good to go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Max.
Take 6 minutes for your moment of Zen and shoot me a message of what was your light bulb moment. Am I the only one who remembers like moment of Zen from Daily Show? Am I crazy? If you have thoughts on red light, green light, feel free to fill out the 30-second feedback form. I'm sure Melody's got it queued up to post in a couple minutes. This is different. I've not the way I've taught class before. Hopefully it's a good take a step back, see how it's done, then go in and apply it. Step by step, get through it. Got another night of this coming up tomorrow. That's all I got for you guys. Feel free to head out. I will stick around in case anyone needs help. Tomorrow we'll get our messages actually sending, being able to type into the input, have that saved to the database. We'll learn how to make edit work. We'll touch on the ORM and we'll go from there.
Max, you're posting the code as
I
well.
am posting the code this very minute. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you for posting it.
It is posted. Randy, was that like T-Rex arms or what was that? Yeah, your camera's still on. You didn't leave the Zoom meeting. See you swinging your arms over there. Like, what is going on?
No, please. I want to go home.